The director has fallen in love with me, so I'm going to be his wife. I'm the only one who supports Edward. We are getting married soon. I feel bad, but I want to protect Olive. So please leave." I just stood there, stunned. What on earth were they saying? Edward and Olive were smiling at each other, completely immersed in their own world. I don't know what happened after that. Unable to bear it any longer, I packed my things and left the house. My name is Stella. I work at the animal hospital my husband runs. In a sense, I am the director's wife. However, although it's called running a business, the staff consists only of my husband, Edward, and myself. Even I think so, but indecisive me and easygoing Edward are not the type to work briskly and efficiently. That's why we decided to work in a small workplace where we don't have to mind each other, only visible to each other. That's why we've gotten to where we are without hiring any other staff. With just the two of us, the income is sufficient for our lifestyle. Our animal hospital, just for Edward and me, was always a stress-free and comfortable space. I thought this peaceful life would continue forever. However, I was unaware that the balance of our relationship was gradually crumbling. Then, one day, an unexpected big change came. "Here is your tea latte order." I was surprised and stared at the steaming tumbler placed in front of me. On this year's first hot summer day, what I ordered was not a hot tea latte, but a chilled citrus tea. I never expected such a mistake to happen at a cafe I visited to escape the heat. I supported my face with my hand as I stared at the tea latte. What should I do? I just need to tell them they made a mistake with the order. But this cafe is an important place where we often hold meetings for our animal hospital with Edward. So I don't want the staff to dislike me or think I'm a complainer. But I can't bear to drink a hot beverage on such a hot day. Isn't it okay as long as you can drink it? Or maybe you could just order a new citrus tea, Edward suggested. But I wasn't happy about paying for 2 drinks. My usual indecisiveness was hindering my actions. As always, even though I know I should act quickly, I can hardly make a decision. Today, after hesitating for a long time to Edward's dismay, I finally decided to ask for an exchange. "Are you doing that now?" The cafe staff, who characteristically drawled their words, made a clearly displeased face when I pointed out that I ordered a citrus tea. But let me repeat, this mistake was not my fault. Moreover, the product had just arrived, and I hadn't even taken a sip yet. The cute staff member, who looked charming with twin tails, coldly responded to my complaint, despite her appearance. "Just put up with the tea latte since it's already been served." I was shocked by the staff's attitude, laughing off the mistake. She seemed to have no remorse at all. I felt ridiculous for having put up with it. So I ended up calling out loudly, "Excuse me, is the manager here?" When the person in charge hurried over, I explained the situation in detail. The staff member who initially responded fiddled with her twin tails, looking sullen. "Olive, it's you again. But, well, you've been scolded by other customers before, right? And you often make mistakes with orders. It's still a drink, so isn't that good enough?" Anyway, while the manager was still speaking, he grabbed the staff member by the collar, apologized, and pulled her into the back of the store. Olive, ha! That name I overheard by chance lingered in my memory as I ended the day. Of course, the citrus tea was safely delivered to our table afterward. It was delicious as expected. I truly felt happy enjoying the afternoon with Edward during the holiday, until I went to work the next day. "Please take care." Excuse me. I was shocked and stood still, waiting for me at the animal hospital. After I had finished the morning chores, was Olive, the staff member I had seen at the cafe. "You know, she was fired in the end," Edward quickly explained next to me. "It seems that after our incident, Olive was fired from the cafe. Although it was only for a short time, it was clear she was a troublemaker, so I wasn't surprised by the news. The cafe's manager must have had a hard time deciding to fire her. However, how it was related was unclear. It's sad, isn't it? That's why I intend to have her work here from now on." "What? Really?" It wasn't just a surprise that immobilized me. My mouth agape, I found myself unable to move for a while. There was so much I wanted to say. Firstly, the plan had been for just my husband and me to run this animal hospital. Due to our natures, which are wary of being encumbered, we wanted to avoid hiring others. Secondly, while I sympathize with Olive being fired from the cafe, there were valid reasons for it. Hiring someone with a problematic past could invite trouble. Moreover, there is no need to employ such a person. This isn't like rescuing stray cats or dogs. While I do feel sorry for her, I don't think she is suited for customer service. As I desperately tried to make my case, Olive muttered beside me, "I guess you wouldn't want someone young like me around." "Because you're young who said that?" However, Edward quickly latched onto Olive's comment. "Hey, are you jealous of this young girl? That's rather immature for an adult." Suddenly, it was as if I was being portrayed as a troublesome old lady, jealous of a younger woman, but that wasn't it. I argued fervently. The problem wasn't Olive's age, it was her rude customer service attitude. But no matter how much I pleaded, they just laughed, as if I was some petty old woman jealous of a younger one. Before I knew it, Edward and Olive were in cahoots, and I was left isolated. "Don't worry. I won't leave you hanging." Wow, the director is so kind. "You're lucky, madam." What is this act? While internally rejecting the notion with every fiber of my being, I tried to steer the conversation back, but it was futile. Edward's pitying smile and Olive's smug expression pricked at my heart. I am the director, therefore the decision is mine. In the end, Edward unilaterally decided to hire Olive, completely ignoring my opinion. My pride was already in shambles, but worse was yet to come the next day. First, let's put Olive at the reception. Having a young person there brightens things up. I was shocked. Had Edward forgotten how Olive handled customer service at the cafe? Having her show the same attitude at our animal hospital's reception would be a problem. However, my concerns were once again dismissed by Edward. "Are you still saying that? It's your bad habit to be dissatisfied when things don't go your way." What was he talking about? The only reason it had worked so far was because it was just Edward and me, not because I was fixated on the reception position. I was simply pointing out that Olive had a problematic personality, but Edward was convinced I was hung up on the position. Reception work is something anyone can do. In front of Edward's definitive statement, I had no choice but to stay silent. Olive also confidently declared, "Reception? Piece of cake. I'm great at customer service." "Fine. I don't care anymore. Whatever happens, happens." Olive insisted on working the reception alone from the start, and I decided to focus on the back-end tasks. If she thinks reception work is so easy, she can go ahead and give it her best shot. "Oh, a new receptionist? She's adorable. I've been thinking for a while, it must be hard with just you. You've got a great apprentice, madam." Surprisingly, the feedback from the customers was overwhelmingly positive. Olive's naturally friendly demeanor made a good impression, and the pet owners praised her cuteness. Listening to this, my feelings were complicated. Edward smirked triumphantly at me, while Olive stuck her tongue out at me where the customers couldn't see. I should have been happy that a staff member at my animal hospital was doing well, but I couldn't bring myself to be genuinely pleased, and I hated that about myself. However, this was just the beginning. Where is Olive? As she got used to the job, Olive began to slack off frequently. When the pet owners were gone, she would go to a nearby convenience store to buy snacks. In the worst cases, she went to a major fast food chain to buy food, then held little tea parties in the air-conditioned server room. As a result, the reception area would become crowded, and I had to bear the brunt of the frustrated pet owners' anger due to the long wait times. Additionally, Olive once left a drink on top of the server, causing water to seep inside and halt the electronic medical record system. There were also cigarette butts scattered around the server room. Fortunately, the sprinkler system didn't activate, but upon investigation, we found that the wiring had been intentionally cut. Fixing all these problems would take a considerable amount of time. Sigh. I couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. I opposed this because I saw it coming. You shouldn't eat snacks during work. You shouldn't frequently enter the server room without a reason. Eating and drinking in the server room is prohibited. And how am I supposed to explain these basic things to an adult? While I was thinking about this, I spoke to Olive. "Excuse me, what?" To my surprise, Olive suddenly started crying, and this was in front of many pet owners. Oh dear, poor thing. To others, it must have looked like a mother-in-law bullying her daughter-in-law, even though I hadn't done anything. Hearing the commotion, Edward rushed in and hurriedly separated Olive and me. "What are you doing?" "No, I tried to explain the situation to Edward in a panic, but it was too late. The pet owners in the waiting room, my husband Edward and Olive, who stood behind him with a sarcastic smile, all held hostility towards me. No one was on my side. Edward yelled, "I told you to leave Olive alone." The room fell silent in an instant. I could see the pet owners looking at us with concern. Such a scene was unimaginable in this animal hospital before. Edward, standing protectively in front of Olive, harshly reprimanded me further. "Stop it. Your attitude is embarrassing." Did he know? Did he know that behind him, Olive was smirking and sticking her tongue out at me? I wanted to explain everything properly, but the fear of being publicly scolded by a large man suppressed my thoughts. Edward might not have been aware, but when he shouted at me, his face showed a notable sense of superiority and excitement. The feeling that saying anything would be useless kept me silent. "Understood," I said, and quickly left the scene. I roughly shoved my smartphone and wallet into my bag and ran out through the back door. From that day onwards, as the director, Edward forbade me from working when Olive was present. "You're exhausted. You should take some time to rest." Those were the only words Edward said to me after I got home. I didn't know what kind of conversations he had with Olive, nor did I want to. I believed that asking would lead to no good results. Though Edward's tone was softer than it had been at the hospital, his dissatisfaction with me was still apparent. Even when I tried to explain what had happened at the hospital that day, his attitude didn't change. "I understand, but there's no need to scold her to the point of making her cry." He genuinely believed that I had made Olive cry. That misunderstanding shattered me further. Since then, the days continued where Edward and Olive worked during the day, and I came in only after Olive had left. Mornings began with watching Edward leave for work happily and evenings started with me heading to the clinic as Olive went home. The animal hospital in the evening was far from clean, left in disarray after Olive's free-spirited actions. I cleaned up the mess and then got to work on my tasks. Edward never helped with the cleaning, barely spoke to me, and left right on time, leaving me behind. "If you properly reflect on your behavior, you can come back," Edward would say, but it was clear from his tone that he didn't mean it. He probably found it easier with just Olive rather than having me around. Thinking about it sometimes drove me crazy, but even the thought of returning to the hospital and how I should behave was overwhelming. There were days like that. That day, I hurried to prepare dinner. The menu included Edward's favorite sautéed salmon, fried potatoes, and clam chowder. I hoped it would make him happy. With that thought, I put the pot on the stove to brew some tea. A glance at the wall clock showed it was already 10 p.m. He was late again. He was probably eating out. Sigh. I sighed once more. Since Olive started working at the animal hospital, conversations with Edward had nearly ceased. Despite living in the same house, we barely saw each other. How long would this situation continue? I doubted that the animal hospital could run smoothly without me. I had told Edward many times, but he always responded with, "Women think about such trivial things. Olive and I can manage perfectly fine without you labeling me as a self-centered woman." I just stared at the boiling water in the pot. No matter how much it boiled, it never exceeded 212 degrees or overflowed from the pot. It felt similar to my experience in this house. I was alone in my anger, feeling like no one understood. How long had this been going on? What's with this pathetic meal? I snapped back to reality at the sound of the voice. The water in the pot had almost evaporated, leaving white residue at the bottom. Looking at me from across the kitchen was Olive. How had she gotten in here? There she stood, mocking the dinner I had prepared for Edward. "Don't touch that," I said hastily from across the counter, but Olive ignored me, picking up a piece of salmon and putting it in her mouth. "This tastes like old people's food." "It's awful," Olive said, grimacing, then throwing the plate of salmon into the trash. The carefully prepared dish, along with the favorite bowl Edward and I had chosen together, disappeared into the garbage before my eyes. "Edward said your cooking is inedible. That's why he always eats out," Olive said, throwing each of my dishes into the trash one by one. She had unconsciously started calling Edward by his first name, but I didn't even notice that. I was too focused on the despair of seeing my food being thrown away. I rushed out of the kitchen, trying to stop her from tossing the food from the dining table into the trash, but it was already too late. I watched in disbelief as the last of the fried potatoes disappeared into the garbage. These were all supposed to be Edward's favorite dishes. He always ate my cooking with such enjoyment, but was it all just a facade? Is that so? But ever since I met him, Edward has been eating with me, Olive said, showing me her phone. On the screen were photos of Edward and Olive enjoying meals together, posted on social media. With trembling hands, I scrolled through the images. This wasn't something that had been going on for just a day or two. It had been happening since I was barred from working at the animal hospital. Edward's recent late nights weren't because he was busy with work or dealing with Olive's mess. He had been dining with her. Edward's expression in the photos on social media was one of pure happiness. As I scrolled to the last image, I couldn't help but look away. There, Olive was smiling triumphantly in Edward's arms, and the photo was taken today. Do you understand now? You're just a tag along, a dull add-on by Edward's side. He loves me. I'm the one who deserves to be his true partner," Olive declared proudly. "Edward says so too. He says I'm much cuter than you and that you're just a colleague at work," Olive added. "Exactly," she said, turning to reveal Edward standing there with a wry smile. I stared at him, wide-eyed. He looked happier than I had ever seen him. "Stella, marriage isn't everything for us. Even if we separate, you can still work at the animal hospital as you always have," he said. I was stunned. I couldn't comprehend what he was saying, but as a man, I want to make Olive happy. She will support me as the director's wife. You won't lose your job. Isn't that a good deal? Edward suggested. Edward and Olive looked at each other with smiles, completely immersed in their own world. They held hands and told me their decision. Edward has fallen in love with me, so I'm going to be his wife. I'm the only one who supports him. We are getting married soon. I feel bad, but I want to protect Olive. So please leave. My family says it's better to be with someone younger. My mother even said that younger women might have children. Although I was grateful to Edward's family, I couldn't stay there any longer. I don't know what happened after that. Unable to watch any longer, I packed my things and left. Leaving the animal hospital where Edward was the director was a given. Not wanting to face them, I used a resignation service. I never saw their reaction to my resignation. Even if you divorce, there's no need to quit your job. Work and marriage are separate, so don't worry. The resignation service relayed that to me, but I had no intention of going back. I couldn't understand why they thought I would return after being ignored so thoroughly. I was anxious about being unemployed while looking for a new job, but surprisingly, I found a new job quickly. Now I'm working hard at my new workplace. A senior from my school days introduced me to my next job, which was also at an animal hospital. There's a lot to learn at the new workplace, and I'm busy every day. But this busyness helps me forget about Edward. I am grateful for this new environment. Since that night, I moved out and found a new place to live. During the move, I welcomed a new family member, a 6-year-old beagle who had been rescued. She's not as noisy as a puppy, making her a perfect partner for my single life. Her name is John. Even though she's a girl, her name is John. The shelter staff named her, and she seems to like it, so I call her by that name too. One day I was startled by John's unusually loud barking and looked outside to see an unexpected person standing there. Oh, here you are. The person standing there was Olive, now Edward's wife. She sighed deeply and shook her head. I never expected to encounter Olive at such a busy time. I felt an urge to close the door, but she had already seen me. Olive looked at me with those eyes that always charmed people and said, "How terrible! Where have you been hiding?" "The animal hospital has been so hectic." "And what do you want?" I replied coldly, causing Olive to look slightly shaken, but that wasn't my concern. I wondered why she thought she would be welcomed in this situation. "Huh? Oh? I finally found you alone and..." "What is this?" "Hurry up." "I'm busy," I calmly urged, trying not to show any emotion. I didn't want to experience another commotion like before. However, Olive seemed to take this as an invitation, took a deep breath, and with a mischievous smile like a mother about to surprise her child, said, "I have some very good news today." There was no way this could be good news. I didn't have the patience to waste time on such matters. "I already told you, I'm busy. Get to the point." Well. My curt response momentarily left Olive at a loss for words, but she quickly regained her smile and said, It must be tough doing everything on your own. So I thought Edward could come back and help. I don't need him. Olive's expression changed instantly. The look of utter shock on her face was exactly like a pigeon hit by a pea shooter. Her expression was a perfect depiction of surprise, one that should be included in a dictionary of idioms. What? Why? Didn't you like Edward? I'm not interested anymore, and I don't care. But more importantly, I looked at Olive's face and smiled. What do you think about an animal hospital without a licensed veterinarian? The truth is, I was the only one with a veterinarian's license at that animal hospital. Edward had the title of director but didn't have a single qualification. He complained about being beneath someone as a man, so I reluctantly made him the nominal representative. Moreover, he didn't have any qualifications as a veterinary nurse or a groomer. In reality, he was just an animal lover doing odd jobs. We met at the same prep school, both aiming to become veterinarians. I passed the exam on my first attempt, but Edward failed year after year. He repeated the exam many times, but eventually his family's financial support reached its limit, and he had to work with just his high school diploma. However, impressed by his deep love for animals, I believed we could build a wonderful animal hospital together. We got married and opened a small hospital. That's the animal hospital Edward and I worked hard to build. Edward felt embarrassed by other qualified professionals, so we didn't hire any staff. And that's how we ended up in this situation. In fact, Edward had contacted me several times. Even if we divorce, we're not strangers. You can always come back. Even if we separate, you're still an essential partner in the business. Come back whenever you want. It was a joke when I said Olive's cooking was good. Actually, your cooking is the best, so come back anytime. When I saw these messages, I couldn't help but laugh. Edward's intentions were immediately clear. Without me, he couldn't continue his favorite pretend veterinarian game, and he was struggling. It seemed he wasn't even getting decent meals. If he thought I would jump at his words and come back, he was underestimating me too much. I made sure Olive understood that too. Actually, I'm the current director now. What? In fact, I decided to take over an animal hospital from a friend from university who was moving overseas after getting married. Right now, I'm busy preparing to open that hospital. So, I don't have the luxury of working at another hospital. The look on Olive's face was priceless. Her expression went from pale to flushed in an instant. She probably thought she could live an easy life as the director's wife after marrying Edward. She still didn't understand how unstable and challenging running a private practice can be. Rumor had it that the animal hospital without a veterinarian was now almost in a state of closure. With no clients coming in, Olive and Edward sat at the reception, trembling in fear as they watched their savings dwindle each day. With no revenue and only expenses piling up, that was the inevitable outcome. What? You betrayed us. Why won't you work at our hospital? Could there be a more unreasonable anger? They insulted me and drove me out, saying I was ugly with jealousy and that my cooking was terrible. That's all in the past. You're too hung up on it. That's why people don't like you. What on earth was she talking about? They must have gone through life doing everything half-heartedly, never reflecting or apologizing. I looked at Olive's angry face with cold eyes and slowly, deliberately, forced out my words. Yes, I'm very particular. That's why I won't forgive you. Huh. Why? No reason was necessary. I decided so. You have no choice but to accept my decision, and you have no right to complain about it. If you continue, I will call the police. Is that what you want? At last, Olive seemed to grasp the situation. Then what are we supposed to do about the clinic? Realizing her wishes wouldn't be granted, Olive shouted, tears welling up in her eyes. What about those dogs and cats? Ah, that. I understood immediately. Edward had a troublesome habit. He abandoned them again. He would bring home any poor dog or cat he found. I initially saw it as Edward's kindness, but that changed quickly. Shortly after our marriage, the number exceeded 10. Moreover, Edward himself would quickly lose interest and neglect their care. Edward, you promised to take care of them. Sorry, Stella. You're a veterinarian, so it should be easy for you. How many times had we repeated this conversation? But they were living beings. I couldn't abandon them midway, so I reluctantly took care of them while looking for new owners. I ended up taking care of all the dogs and cats. I was like a one-person shelter. Without the veterinarian network, the situation could have easily turned into an animal hoarding crisis. I thought I could handle it because I was a veterinarian, but apparently Olive had been doing the same thing. In no time, more than 10 dogs and cats were neglected, leaving their home filthy with excrement. Complaints from neighbors flooded in due to the stress-induced howling at night. I can't live in that house anymore. You have to come back and take care of them. I couldn't help but laugh. Why should I go and clean up? You're his wife. You're supposed to support Edward, aren't you? Olive fell silent for a moment, likely remembering the words she used to drive me out. But then, she started screaming hysterically. I only married him because I thought he was a veterinarian. If he's a worthless man with no skills, I wouldn't have married him. No money, a filthy house, it's all the worst. That's how it is, I said, turning back to the entrance of my new animal hospital. Because there stood... What's this? Edward. I had called him earlier because Olive wasn't leaving. You're the one who's been living off of me since you got fired from the cafe. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for you? Hey, that's my line. How dare a middle-aged man like you think you can be with a gal like me? If you're not a doctor, I'd never even consider you. Don't be ridiculous. It's your fault the clinic is going under. Get a job, do night shifts, whatever, and bring money into the house. No way. I'm done with this. I'm leaving. Olive stormed out in a rage, leaving Edward standing there, looking stunned and helpless. Then you're going to pay back all the money I spent on you. I'm sick of it. The unbearable shouting echoed through my new workplace, making me feel nauseous. Well, I had already called the police, so they would soon take care of them. Still, I smiled softly behind their backs. I was truly grateful to Olive. I had been contemplating how to get rid of Edward, who was not only useless but also dragging down the animal hospital's operations. He could never do more than odd jobs, yet he flaunted foreign cars and branded suits. He wanted to be the director without being a veterinarian. At the very least, if he had a qualification as a veterinary nurse or groomer and earned his own income, it might have been tolerable. But he would spend money on meals and gifts for younger people and women, just like he would pick up stray dogs and cats. All those expenses came out of the money I earned as a veterinarian. When I saw Olive, I felt she was like one of the stray cats Edward often brought home. So I made sure to involve Olive at the cafe, talking loudly enough for her to hear that we were veterinarians running an animal hospital. As expected, Olive clung to Edward. If she had been even slightly smarter, she might have considered that a woman could be the veterinarian. However, she unfortunately believed that women were just accessories to men. Without any doubt, she clung to Edward, and he, as usual, displayed his protective instincts and picked her up. I could hear the sirens approaching. I whispered to Edward and Olive, "You brought happiness to me. Olive, I am genuinely grateful. Meeting you has been my luckiest break."